coming in, and I hope that this is time well spent. The next 90 minutes, we are going to talk about something that I am very excited about and hope that you will find potentially as revolutionary for your business. Just some pieces to talk through right at the beginning. I want you to know that this webinar is recorded and it will be available to you after the event. I want you to use the chat and Q&A for the opportunity to interact with us. And then just thank you so much for being here live. And lunch is on us for all of the live attendees. You will see it in your inbox after this event. Well, I am Ted Klauser, President and CEO of PCA Technology Solutions here in Little Rock, Arkansas, and with offices and a presence in Dallas, Texas, brand new this year. And you are here to learn about Microsoft Copilot. And I know there will be some polls. Our team is working in the background, and you'll see some polls pop up. We want to ask some questions. We want this to be interactive, but I will share that we're actually going to do Q&A at the end. So save questions, save things that you want to learn more about, and then we will talk about those at the very end. Basically, as you see, there's a poll that's come up. We want to know what your thoughts are right out of the gate. How do you feel about AI? Are you loving it? You think it's scary? Or you're hesitant? What we're going to do is learn about how AI specifically can impact your business. So first and foremost, the question I would have is, how old do you think AI is? The correct answer, 75 years. Let me show you just a little piece of how it all started.
Looks great. Oh.
I'm David Kenyon, and I'm the research historian here at Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park is famous as one of the birthplaces of computing, and one of the names that's associated with that in particular is, of course, Alan Turing. He worked on foundational ideas in computing before the Second World War, and then came here to Bletchley Park and made a huge contribution to code breaking, in particular helping with the breaking of the German Enigma codes. One of the ideas that Alan Turing had, which is most widely remembered, is what's referred to as the Turing test, or what he called the imitation game. And he hypothesized that in the future, computers would become so powerful that it was possible that a computer might not be distinguishable from a human being, but actually making a machine impersonate a human at that level is, for modern computation, not an enormous challenge. The real challenge of AI is to create a system that doesn't just mimic a human's responses, but actually mimics a human's thought processes. One scientist talked about this moment of what he called the singularity, where a powerful enough computer was invented that that computer itself could then create other computers, and this would iterate on to a situation where humanity was under threat and computers could take over. When he first had the idea, he envisioned a sort of utopia where the computers would take over everything and human beings could just live a life of comfort and luxury. But later on he revised his view and went, oh well, that relies on the computers being benign creatures, which we couldn't guarantee. My personal view is that that world, whether it's a good world or a bad world, is still very, very far away in the future. I think it's incumbent upon all of us, not only those that create AI, but those within government who regulate the creators of AI, to make sure that any system that's introduced that affects ordinary people's daily lives is absolutely fit for purpose and has been brought into use in a controlled and thoughtful way. Otherwise, we risk building all sorts of biases and problems into the system, because the system is ultimately only as good as its creator.
So one of the things that stands out to me that was very interesting in that was that he said he believes that this is very, very far in the future. Let me show you where we are today. So there is a very good chance that if you were to purchase a BMW in the next 2 years, it could be fully assembled by those figure robots. I'm telling you today that AI is here to stay. And the world is changing. Let me just first say thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. In the last 2.5 weeks with you on this webinar, we've now presented this to over 50 businesses in Central Arkansas. So I'm very thankful to pass this message along. The important part that I want to point out is that the world is changing. We live in an AI world. We live where industries are transforming rapidly, and the drivers for economic growth are evolving, and technology is at an inflection point. I want you to just take a look at just how some of the past technologies have taken as far as the length of time to reach 100 million users. Mobile phones took 16 years, Facebook 4.5 years, but ChatGPT only took 3 months to reach 100 million users. And so if you think of just how rapid that was, it is immensely impactful to think of ChatGPT as being the first. And now here we are today with other generative AIs that continue to take off. But what does that mean for the economy? Well, if you look back at the printing press in 1450, it had a little bit of an impact on the economy, but less than 1x. Fast forward to where we are today, and AI has more than a 20x multiplier on our GDP. And it's only increasing faster and faster. If you think about just over 3 weeks ago, DeepSeek, or just under 3 weeks ago, DeepSeek came out and ripples were immediate. The stock market was impacted. News was impacted, all because of a new advancement in AI. But what I want to talk about is AI that is at your fingertips that you may not even realize is there. So we're going to talk about Microsoft Copilot. And first, there are some statistics in here that I think are pretty interesting to look at. So how much is Copilot worth to users? Well, 96% of people would be disappointed if you gave them Copilot and took it away, or if they no longer had access to it. 83% would not want to go back to working without it. And 47% might actually ask you during the interview process, do you use Microsoft Copilot? And if your answer is no, they might not work for you. In fact, Copilot is far more important to people than a free lunch. We're giving you a free lunch today for being a part of this. But as you can see, most people would say, give me Copilot. And so why does this matter to you? Well, I think it's important to recognize that as you hire in the future, the next generation, Gen Z and those that are after, they're not afraid of AI. They're not afraid of technology. And I want you to think about it this way. What if, as you were looking to hire new people, you said, in our organization, we don't allow calculators? Would they work for you? What if you said, we don't Google at our organization, we send people to the library and we pull up the encyclopedia to get our data? Some of that's laughable, right? But in less than 2 years, I fully anticipate AI will be treated in the same manner. Your people, the people that want to work for you, will say, am I allowed to use AI and do you have a strategy? So some of the things that we will talk about today is we want to make sure that you do have a strategy. AI is here to stay. So there's really one of 3 approaches that you can have towards it. You can either embrace it fully and start to develop a plan. You can stay on the fence and watch and determine when you're ready to go. Or you can say, I'm not adopting AI. And I would argue that that's the wrong answer. So you'll want to pivot and change it back to one of the first 2. But let's focus on Microsoft. Microsoft is a 40-year-old company. I'm sorry, more than 40, but they've essentially been in the space for 40 years, earning your trust. They have done a pretty good job at making sure that they do what they say they're going to do. And for many of you that are listening and watching this webinar, you already trust them. You already are using their platforms. So it makes sense, rather than us looking at a DeepSeek or even looking into ChatGPT, it makes sense to look at Microsoft and how Microsoft can better your organization. But the importance of all this is that we have something called digital debt. And digital debt is costing us innovation. Look at these numbers. 64% of employees say they don't have enough time or energy to do their job. What would your employees say? How about the middle number, where 57% of employees' time is spent communicating? That could be chat messages, it could be emails, it could be face-to-face, but that only leaves 43% of their time left for creativity. And I think some of the argument is AI could potentially stifle creativity. And I would challenge you to think it actually can enhance creativity. It will enhance efficiency, which in theory will allow you to buy back time. So part of the strategy is, what are you going to do with these efficiencies? And we'll talk about that. But 87% of organizations believe AI will give them a competitive edge. So I want you to be one of those 87% in your business. Let's look at some of the stats about businesses that are able or choosing to embrace AI. They're 2 times more likely that a leader will say AI boosts they will boost their productivity. Sorry, I got tongue-tied. That it will boost productivity versus cutting headcount. One of the things that I talk about at PCA is that you don't have to be at risk of AI replacing you. But as we look to add new teammates, we are going to ask the question, can AI do this before we expand our team? And I think that that's a valid way to look at AI and to make a strategy around things that are challenges. Again, we see that 64% of employees lack time and energy, but 70% of employees are willing to delegate to AI. And here are just some ways that you can start thinking about it. First, I want you to have a strategy. What are your organizational goals for AI, for using AI? What is acceptable? What is not acceptable? Remember that those that enter your organization are going to have a bias already about AI. And it's important that you define the bias. So where there are standards of not killing or not stealing, we don't have the standards for how to use AI. So you as an organization want to develop those standards. It's important to have a strategy. An easy way to begin to dabble in it is to look at what your organization's pain points are and how can AI address them. What are you struggling with, or what takes you a significant amount of time? And we'll talk about some examples and focus on some ways to lean into that. You have to understand what your organization's current AI capacities are. And you'll discover today that with Microsoft, you have some of the foundational tools already that will help you get there. I cannot stress enough the importance of your security and data strategy through all of this. We are talking about unleashing a very powerful tool inside of your Microsoft platform. It is essential that you know who has access to what currently before we talk about bringing something of this magnitude into the environment. And then lastly, does your organization have the necessary infrastructure and resources to support these initiatives? With Microsoft, you'll find that you do, but it's important to look at the personnel that it's going to take to provide this upkeep. So what does an AI-powered organization look like? Well, first and foremost, a strong foundation is essential. And so as we dive into what the foundation of the AI platform is, we want to start with tools. And the one thing that I would challenge you to do is I would challenge you to stop Googling and start prompting. So if you've used ChatGPT, which is really what in many ways people think of when they think of AI, I want to challenge you to consider moving to Copilot. And so Copilot, you can use for free. You can download the app on your phone, or you can go to copilot.microsoft.com and you can begin prompting. I would also ask you or urge you to ask your team, are you using AI? And if so, how are you using AI? Begin to develop the strategy of what's acceptable to you inside of your organization. And practice makes perfect, right? So if you begin to prompt, you will begin to learn how to be a better prompter. And I would challenge you to accept that in a year or two, one of the questions you may ask a potential new employee is, how well are you at prompting AI? It is going to be a skill set, and it's going to be a valued skill set for new teammates. But why Microsoft Copilot? Well, it's powerful and protective, and you are already trusting it. It has the security features that we need. It, as Microsoft as an organization who we've trusted, said, we're not looking at your data is secure. They also say we're going to use the best of the best technologies. So they're actually going to lean into the same thing that ChatGPT and others use. And they're committed to continuing to enhance it and make it better. And then they're going to stay up to date with how they respond and the data that they give you. So I want to talk about some ways that you can look at leaning into Copilot. What if you have a 20-page jargon-filled PDF, or worse, what if it's 100 pages? How do you lean into Copilot to say, just give me the 5 bullets to highlight what this document's about? Would that begin to help you buy back some of your time? How about if you use it to professionally write you emails or captions, or take what you've written and make it better? How about images and generating images? There's been concerns that potentially the art industry could be impacted by this. And I would tell you that that has some accuracy, and those are valid concerns. You also can learn new skills. How do I? What if I? How would I? Ask these types of questions and prompt. And then get answers for specific complex questions. Lean into Copilot, again, free on the web, free on your phone, to actually solve real life challenges or complex equations. And the reason why I say it's a valid solution instead of Google is an example like I want to share with you. So my wife and I travel a lot, and we were thinking about proper climates around the entire globe. So I actually went into Copilot and I prompted it saying, based on San Diego. So I want you to think about that scenario. So I'll prompt it again. San Diego has oceans, it has breeze. I want you to find me 5 places around the world that have an environment and a temperature similar to San Diego. I want the humidity to never be above 70% and the temperature never to be below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it gave me 5 places around the world to look at. And it's a situation that I don't know how I would have Googled it. I suppose I could have and started to put together different graphs and different spreadsheets, but within a matter of minutes, because I prompted, I was able to find that type of information. It's a great way for you to practice, ask it scenarios. Again, in the public format, make sure it's a question that you don't want to be private. We'll talk about how to deal with the privacy here in a little bit, but it's at your disposal, so play with it. What we want to talk today about, though, is Copilot for Microsoft 365. And I want to start out by saying this is not a sales pitch. In fact, I don't want you to go buy Microsoft 365 and pay $30 a user. Not yet, anyway. I want you to focus on the foundation, because it is absolutely critical that you have a security mindset first. For example, if you have a new user that starts tomorrow and you add them to your environment, do you know what they have access to right now? Can you be sure that they can't access data that they shouldn't? Because if you're not sure of that and you unleash the power of AI, they could potentially stumble across things that you would not want them to see. And in a little bit, I'll walk through how that works from a security perspective. So all I want you to do is develop a plan. I don't want you to buy it just yet. I want you to develop a plan. But I do want you to prompt, and I want you to look at Copilot, the free version, at your disposal, copilot.microsoft.com or in the app, and I want you to begin prompting. The difference is that Copilot that I just have been talking about is the one that's the current web data. It's the same thing that Google would use. It's the same thing that ChatGPT uses. It is just based on the public platform. When I gave you that scenario about places around the world, it was using public data. Copilot for Microsoft 365 works inside of your tenant, though, inside of your world, inside of your business applications, inside of your OneDrive, your SharePoint. And I want you to begin thinking about what that might do for you. So as you begin to think about, what if I was able to use AI as a mega fast, mega powerful, mega smart assistant to start doing things for me? And we're going to talk about how that could revolutionize your business. So the next piece on this Get AI Ready checklist is to be in Microsoft 365. Now, we've got nearly 30 people that are attending this webinar today, and I don't know if everybody is in the Microsoft 365 platform. But if you're not, I would urge you to look at it. It is the best of the best as far as office productivity. And the thing about Office 365 or Microsoft 365 is that it is tried, true, and tested. Many of the best organizations in the entire globe lean into Microsoft, and we have for years, right? Microsoft Windows is a staple in business applications. And if you look at those productivity tools at the bottom, so many are familiar: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. And what Microsoft does is they built a very strong, secure foundation that's reliable, that's transparent, and that is expandable. So as we lean into AI, I would ask, why wouldn't we use Microsoft? We already are. It just makes sense. So now, an important piece of this Get AI Ready checklist. How do we organize our sensitive business data? How do we make sure that the right data is in the right hands of the right person? How do we make sure that it's not in the wrong hands? As we look at this next piece, there's a lot of elements. We have messages in Teams. We have meetings. We have files that are shared. We have chat sessions. All of this data is occurring right now. So before we really focus on AI, we want to ask, how secure are we currently? It is an important piece of the structure. So as I challenge you to go back and speak at a board level or at a leadership level and say, what are we going to do about AI? Do not take out, what are we going to do about the security first? It is critical. So we have to set the foundation. We have to make sure that our documentation is classified correctly. We want to make sure that we have sensitivity labels in place. And I'll show you just shortly in a video of how that will work in real life. So as we build this foundation, then we can lean into Copilot for Microsoft 365. And what does that bring us? What brings us the large language models that we know of today that are out on the web already, that are the ChatGPTs of the world and the other platforms. It adds it in with your data inside of your tenant in a secure manner. It leans into your Microsoft 365 apps that we spoke about, and it still has access to the internet. So we still can add and pull some data from an external source to calculate what we need. But it's built around Microsoft's comprehensive approach. So we know that we can trust it from a security perspective. We know it's compliant. We know it's private. And we know it's centered around responsible AI. But what does this mean for you? I want you to begin to think and dream about the possibility of turning things that might take you hours, turning them into minutes or seconds. What would you do with that extra time? That needs to be part of your strategy. When you think about it and your team becomes more efficient, what will you do with that extra time? It might be to grow your business. It might be to allow you or your team to spend more time with their loved ones. The key is to have a strategy. I will assure you that the next generation that comes along will demand efficiency. This gets you there. But some of the ways that you can potentially deal with that time that you're buying back is to run your business, right? To run your department, to run whatever area it is that you are responsible for. How about growing your customer base? What if you had more time to grow your customers? What could that do for your company? How about building your brand? What if you had time, more time, to spend building your brand because you're leaning into AI? And then, of course, scaling securely. I cannot, as an MSSP, stress enough the importance of security first. Copilot for Microsoft 365 is embedded already across these apps that we trust: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams. And I want to take a second or a minute to show you a video. And in this video, focus on the concept of co.
Whoa. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop. Stand still, that's the motto, yeah. Brand new bands for the auto, oh. Foot to the ground, full throttle. Big energy for the night like lotto. Y'all talk lots, never this quiet. Life like a Seinfeld plot. Vault full of songs, all of them bombs. Something like a minefield guy, boom. Get it, tickets running out quick. Bet it, never get it out big. Said it, never had to shout it. They said I couldn't ever do it, okay, how's it? Fit a week worth of work in a minute. Machine well oiled, you know how I stay efficient. To-do list written, I do this different. Hold up, wait a minute, I ain't finished. Okay. Look, flows the same now. Paved the way, the snakes and fakes are chased out. Back to back to back, I changed the pace now. Had to stack the cash until the bank's out. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
So we asked you a question earlier. How do you feel about AI? And my next question would be, Are you starting to see how you can leverage AI in your own business? Was there anything in that video that made you think, that's pretty cool, I'd like to know more? Again, I want you to start thinking about this being a virtual assistant to drive automation and to drive outcomes like you've only ever dreamt of. And I want to show you some real examples. Let's start with Microsoft Teams.
Imagine you have an appointment that conflicts with your weekly business review. What if you could do both? With Copilot, you can opt to follow a meeting. After the meeting ends, Copilot will summarize what you missed. You'll get a notification in Teams when the recap is ready. This recap will highlight content that was shared, summarize notes, and any action items for you or others whose names were mentioned. You see that one of your customers was discussed, and you want to learn more. You can ask Copilot clarifying questions, and it provides a detailed response. It can tell you why a certain decision was made, and gives you helpful context. You can even ask Copilot what other solutions were considered, and it provides citations from the transcript so you can see where Copilot drew these conclusions. It's a huge time saver. So that was pretty cool. But the real magic of Copilot happens during a live meeting. Let's say you're in a meeting with your team. You can ask Copilot to summarize the meeting so far. You can see how it summarizes who said what points were made, and it's really capturing the spirit of the discussion. And as the meeting progresses, you can check in on where people stand. You can even ask Copilot what questions are unresolved. It's just amazing to see this happen in real time during a meeting.
Now, one of the things that I have loved the privilege of having is watching people's faces change when I've done these presentations in person. And so I don't have the privilege of seeing yours. But did you start to think, wow, this could help me? Did you start to think about the fact that this sounds efficient? But I also recognize that there could be some concerns, right? As we start thinking about somebody potentially in the middle of a meeting prompting Copilot for things, that could be a distraction. So again, I challenge you, develop your AI process, develop your policies, put them into your handbooks, teach on them. Because if you don't, someone that comes in and is used to doing it this way won't know that you expect something different. So determine what you're comfortable with, determine what your business wants, and be sure to set it in place. Again, these things make a lot of sense, right? You'll see in this next situation with Outlook, the importance of being able to be in two places at once. And then I'll come back and talk about how we can use that in some real life scenarios. Actually, real quick, I forgot about this slide. I always do for some reason, but I like to point it out. On the bottom left of this slide, it's pretty powerful to see that you can actually see how long someone talked during a meeting. That's scary, right? But it's also a tool that managers could use. I see here that Mona talked most of the time and Babek talked as well. Who was really supposed to do most of the talking? Did it correlate with what you were expecting? Obviously, the meeting notes give some feedback. There are some sentiment options that you can ask about tones. It allows you to analyze some of these things that you normally would analyze if you were in the meeting, but maybe you just don't have the opportunity to be at that meeting. So again, what's the strategy? And now let's look at Outlook.
Copilot in Outlook can help you prioritize your time and stay on top of meetings. Here you've been invited to a meeting that conflicts with the meeting you're planning to attend. Clearly, you can only attend one. From the meeting invite, you can choose to RSVP with follow. Switching over to your calendar, you can see that you're now following this meeting. Once the meeting starts on Teams, the organizer will receive a notification to record the meeting because someone is following it. Now, after the meeting is done and the recording is ready, Copilot will notify you that the meeting recap is ready for you to review. You can then ask Copilot some questions about the meeting, like, summarize this meeting, or are there any action items for me? That way you can stay on top of things as if you were present during the meeting.
So for any of us that have ever said, I can't be in two places at once, now you can. Think about this though. I had a meeting just a couple of weeks ago that I was not able to attend due to a conflict. How would I deal with that? Well, I would go ask one of the attendees to give me an update on how the meeting went. I might want a 2-minute update. They may choose to give me a 30-minute update. Neither of those are efficient. It takes time away from the person who participated in the meeting to take time to update me. They may not even add all of the details, or maybe they'll forget about something that was pretty critical. In this case, I can use a tool to get the information I want, and then I can follow up with pointed questions that will help me get faster results. Think about that. How about Microsoft Word?
When you've written a paragraph in shorthand, you can highlight it and click Rewrite. Copilot then offers several alternate options to choose from that are all written professionally. And it can translate wordy or complex paragraphs into digestible visualized tables. You can even use Copilot to add a column with extra data, which it can complete automatically. Copilot also makes you the expert on any document. Simply ask a question about the content, and Copilot will provide a concise response.
So I want you to start calculating in your mind, how long would that take? How much time are you beginning to save? How efficient is it? These are things that I hope are exciting you. And I hope that for anybody that was potentially on the fence or maybe against AI is starting to see the value of using it inside of your organization. Now, the next slide I love. And for anybody that uses Excel, get ready.
Copilot puts all the rich capabilities of Excel at your fingertips. Say you need to analyze this quarter's sales results for the monthly business review. You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need. But you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, giving you a sandbox to play in, and helping you get a better understanding of what's happening without modifying the data in the original sheet. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig a little deeper and ask a follow-up question with a what-if scenario. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model of the scenario, and even asks you if you want to learn more about what it did, with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot has turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
So for anybody that uses Excel, I can't imagine you would say anything less than wow. Think about how long it would take you. In those live presentations I've asked, and people have said, that would take me 40 hours. Some people have said it would take 3 people. This was done in minutes. Think about that. How could that revolutionize your business? How could it revolutionize your efficiency? It's there. The capabilities are available. We're just going to talk about how to have a strategy to get those in place. Also, note, that was done in a completely separate file. None of the original document was touched at all. Now, I've said several times, we cannot let out security. So let's show an example of why security matters as we pull information out of documents.
Microsoft 365 Copilot works with the data security controls you have in place for file access, labeling, classification, and data loss prevention. Mario Rogers works for Violet Martinez, and both are on the same team at Contoso. Mario and Violet are also members in the same group working on Project Falcon. Now we'll start with Violet, who's been working with the procurement and contract management teams to sell their partner ReliCloud 1,500 Mark 8 quadcopters. And you can see the file is labeled highly confidential with restricted access, and it describes all the terms in the purchase agreement. Because Violet has access to the file, she's able to search for and find it in SharePoint and Microsoft365.com. And of course, Violet can also navigate to the file's location in the agreements folder of the project site to find the purchase agreement. So now let's look at Mario's experience. Even though he's on the same team and working on Project Falcon with Violet, if Mario tries to search for the Contoso purchase agreement, he won't find it. And there are a few purchasing documents that he does find without sensitive information, but not the one that Violet's working on. And if Mario knows the location of the purchase agreement and tries to navigate to it directly, it just appears as an empty folder to him. And when Mario launches Word on the web and creates a blank document, then prompts Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the Contoso purchase agreement as a reference file, because Microsoft 365 Copilot respects the file permissions of its user, Copilot also cannot access the purchase agreement. Now, if we switch back to Violet's screen, because she has permission to access the purchase agreement, she can use Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the file. And after a moment, you'll see it created a summary of the purchase agreement, and Violet decides to keep it. Then, data security controls for Microsoft Purview discover sensitive information found in the Microsoft 365 Copilot generated content. The document is automatically labeled as highly confidential, and policies are enforced to restrict access to the document.
So as I mentioned earlier, security is essential here because we've used a tool to pull data out and it creates a new document. So because things were properly set up in the first place, they were only able to access what they were initially set up to access, and then the data that's pulled out is automatically tagged as highly confidential. So we have to have a strategy for that first. We have to look at that. And those are conversations to have with your trusted coach, your IT coach, to be able to talk through, what does this look like for me and how do I prepare for it? But again, it all starts with your strategy. It starts with, how am I going to allow AI into my workforce? This is powerful, though, if you think about it, but it's also potentially detrimental. The first stories that I had heard when Copilot was released without the security mindset by some organizations, they actually found that sensitive data that was on the network included salary information, and Copilot pulled that out and allowed it to be accessible to an employee that never should have had it in the first place. So a simple way to spot check is the next time you actually have a new employee that's added, look and see what they have access to. Act as them to see and make sure that you've got the proper settings in place. You might think that somewhere that you're storing is secured and only your eyes can see it, but it is super important to make sure that's accurate, because AI is going to be finding holes, really. And so it could be there, and it could be that somebody doesn't know it, but AI is going to be more prone to find it. So it's important.
Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Microsoft 365 Copilot is transforming work with the power of generative AI. It's built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach to enterprise-grade security, compliance, privacy, identity, and responsible AI. Copilot automatically inherits your organization's Microsoft 365 security, compliance, and privacy policies, so you know your data is protected and always in your control. It all starts with your Microsoft 365 tenant. Data stored in your tenant is encrypted and only available to the users within that tenant. Your existing Microsoft 365 permissions and policies ensure that data won't leak between users and groups. And Copilot users only have access to data they've been granted permission to see in Microsoft 365, using the same technology customers have relied on for years. Your tenant sits inside the Microsoft 365 service boundary, where Microsoft's commitments to security, compliance, data location, and privacy are upheld. The Copilot large language models, or LLMs, that process your data sit within that same boundary, much like other Microsoft 365 services. Microsoft does not have eyes-on access, which means no one can view your data. Your data is not used to train the LLMs. And our EU customers can be confident that their data is processed within the EU data boundary. Microsoft 365 Copilot, enterprise-grade security and privacy for the era of generative AI.
So again, several of those things in that message, if I was presenting you with a product you'd never heard of before, you might say, I don't know, I'm leery. I don't know that I can trust that. you are already trusting Microsoft for these things. Why would you not want to at least consider using a tool that's already built around that same promise? And I like to point out that the EU regulations in Europe are much more stringent than they are in the United States. So when you have to be EU compliant, there's a bigger microscope on what you're doing. And so Microsoft already has that. So again, why Microsoft? It's their cloud, it's AI, you already trust them. Your data, their commitment to you is that your data is your data. Their commitment is that your data is not used to train the OpenAI Foundation without permission, and that your data is protected by the most comprehensive compliance and security controls available. And here are just a few samples of people that have used Copilot for their success. So we're nearing the end of the presentation, and usually what I find in these presentations is first, when they're in person, there's a lot of interactivity, right? We want this to be your time. We are in a situation where we want to hear from you. We've got our team standing by, watching the Q&A and ready to respond to questions. So please ask. We want to make sure for those of you that have dedicated this time, we want you to get the most out of it. And what does this look like? So what are next steps? Again, I cannot stress enough, please do not go buy the Microsoft license today. I think that the important part to know as well is that you can actually buy Microsoft Copilot for one user, one mailbox, so $30 a month for one user, even if you have 1,000 users inside of your organization. The key though is the strategy, right? Who are you going to allow it to? How are you going to work it within your organization? Are you going to have KPIs centered around who's using it? But I would just urge you to start with that plan and to do it in a secure manner. So you can talk to your trusted technology coach. For many of them on the webinar, that's us here at PCA, and we're happy to have those conversations. But I also want you to learn, and what you're doing today, thank you, first off, for being here, for spending an hour or so with us to learn about this technology. It's what's going to help your business succeed. We talk a lot about successful businesses in the world. So many of them are just faster than others. And so from an AI perspective, it is here to stay. It's no different than the calculator. It is not going anywhere. How quickly you adopt it, how securely you adopt it may be the differentiator between you and your competitor. Lean into the resources, understand the security aspect of it, and practice prompting. Go to Copilot, prompt questions, learn how to be the best prompter that you can be. And so with that, we are ready to take some Q&A. We're ready to take some questions. So bring them. And I love these survey results. I hope that, we've got half of the room that has been using Copilot or other AI tools for a while. That's tremendous. Now we're talking about potentially taking it to the next level. Think about using it inside of your data. What could that do for you? How would it take things to the next level? And so we've got a question here. Is there a good resource for how to incorporate or turn on Copilot across Teams, Word, Excel, etc., if you're on 365 platform that has Copilot? What a great question. I think that the first part is to talk about the exact strategy. And quite honestly, don't see it as cheating if you go ask Copilot, is there a good resource for exactly what you asked? Microsoft actually has a significant amount of resources at learn.microsoft.com that can help you lean into how best to implement it into your organization. And I typically recommend that somebody really champions it, right? So you have 1, 2, maybe a team of 5 that takes it on, and you license it in a temporary manner with those people and see what the results are. Start to drive those efficiencies. Great question. So we've got another one. What is the biggest risk in adopting AI? I think that a big risk is security, right? Absolutely, security is a concern. I think the other is that you need to check its work, right? I loved in that Excel spreadsheet example where it actually showed the work. Remember back for those of us back in school days when the teacher wanted to show our work? I think it is antiquated to expect hours to be important. We want to focus on business outcomes. If you have a new person that comes into your organization and two people work on a project and they provide the exact same output, but one took 40 hours and one took 4 minutes, why would you view the one that took 4 minutes any less? And I think it is important because especially in Gen Z, they are driven to use technology and they are going to lean into AI. And so you have to have a really good strategy on how you're going to allow it to happen. So, but you got to verify it, right? We can't adopt AI and think that it is all knowing. Maybe it will be in 5 years. I fully anticipate that video that I showed you at the beginning with BMW becoming a reality in less than a decade, but we're not there yet. So we have to verify it. Great question. Another question, is Copilot the go-to AI tool for putting together a KPI tracker for an organization, or would you use other tools? Wonderful question. I would say if you're using data inside of your organization, Copilot will be a tremendous way to put together the boundaries or the foundation for you. There are tool sets out there that are built into really a KPI world that can help you track. To me, again, Copilot, I want you to think of as a virtual assistant. It is able to accomplish things inside of platforms that you already have. So you might gather information out of Excel or Word or something of that nature, but you're going to actually get it into another platform. And there are other tools that can automate some of that. So as far as being the go-to tool, I would say within your organization, as you start to look at your own documents, absolutely. If you want to take the last 10 Word documents that you've updated and you want to pull some data out of it, Copilot is the way to go inside of the tenant. And again, Copilot from Microsoft 365 is the one that you pay for that accesses inside of your tenant. We've got another question. I'd like to know the pricing structure for adding Copilot to our organization. Can you explain how that relates to current licensing through PCA? So Copilot is only $30 per user per month. You can add one user, you can add multiple users. Again, the important part of it is if you open it up, it's like having a 24/7 virtual assistant assigned to that user. So I can't stress that enough, that user now has very powerful tools at their disposal. So if you are in charge of security within your organization and you personally already have the authority to view everything you need, it's probably a great place to start. But I also want to point out that if somebody inside an organization, for say, was a global admin, which means they have the keys to all mailboxes, all chat messages, everything inside of the tenant, there could be the risk that if you add Copilot onto that user, they could see things you never wanted them to see. So again, strategy, strategy, strategy. That is essential. But it is only $30 a user a month. So we've got another question. Will Office 365 use any of my data to train its public LLM, even if we only use data inside a specific tenant? So the answer from Microsoft is no. If you use Copilot from Microsoft 365 with a $30 a month charge, they are saying and committed to saying it is yours and it's inside of your tenant. So we have to trust them. We have to believe them. Just like when you store a Word document or you store an Excel document in OneDrive or in your Microsoft Cloud, we're trusting that they're not making that accessible so that somebody at Microsoft or one of your competitors could see it. So we're trusting the same thing. We're believing that what they say is accurate, but they say it doesn't leave your tenant. Great question, though. What has been your favorite personal use of AI so far? That's a fun question. I love that example that I gave about the 5 places around the world. I felt like it was pretty powerful. I have used it to become a much better mechanic or handyman at home than I ever could have imagined. The thing that I love about Copilot is that it still allows you to pull up YouTube videos, or it still links you in to information that you could view that would make your answers or your solutions better. So that's why I'm saying stop Googling and start prompting. And then don't be afraid to ask it questions. Don't be afraid to ask it things that you truly do want to learn and know about. Also the same question but with my company's prompts. So again, if it's inside of your tenant and you had the $30 per month license, It's going to be private. It's going to be only your information. However, if I pull up copilot.microsoft.com right now and I pasted in my private Word document or information in Word document, that would be bad. That would be information that would be publicly accessible. So definitely don't do that. But let me give you another great use case. I actually know cybersecurity insurance pretty well, but I'm not an expert. And just not long ago, we had a client send us some information about a cybersecurity insurance policy that they were looking at. I had a busy week. I was in the middle of doing all of these presentations. I had about 10 minutes to review this, and it was a long email. And I thought, well, I'm teaching about Copilot. I need to actually lean into the power of Copilot. So I took the information. There was not any confidential information in it. It was public information about a specific policy. And I pasted it into copilot.microsoft.com. And I said, based on this policy, would it be considered a world-class solution for an organization that has 100 employees? And it came back and said, well, yes, this ranks as one of the best. Here are some comparison policies that you might want to look at. And I thought, okay, that's pretty good. In summary, give me the 5 bullet points that I need to know about this policy. And it came back with the 5 bullet points. And I'm like, okay, then this is telling me it's exactly what we need. So then I said, help me write a response. And so it put together a response. And I read it and I thought, this is brilliant. I look so smart. And so I pasted it in and I sent it back. So within a matter of less than 5 minutes, I was able to assess the policy, which was about 20 pages. And I was able to take the specifics of that policy, which is really what mattered, right? What specific policy it is. And then I was able to prompt a very intelligent response. Again, I know that what I'm reading and I know that what I'm responding with is accurate. I just did it in a much more efficient manner. And so I would urge you to celebrate that within your team. When your team does that, I think that's wonderful. And I think that even as a society, we're trying to lean into outcomes and efficiencies being the real drivers. But great question. All right, we have another question. We are pushing out Copilot to a test group of users. We started that after implementing an AI use policy. We are working on the various settings prior to expanding beyond the test group. Excellent. Great job. Wonderful way to do it. Again, what you're trying to do is look at your security, minimize your risk, maximize the technology usage. That's a strong strategy. And again, I want to reiterate the importance of having the strategy. That's all I'm asking you to do today. Begin to have the discussions inside of your organization. What is our AI strategy? What is our AI use policy? Have those discussions and prepare. And understand, I have spoken with several of the people over the past 2 weeks that have gone through this. And we've had a few people that have gone back to their organizations and began having these conversations. One was already set up to begin to beta it. So one of the people that attended put it into use and they're beginning to use it. And guess what they said just 2 weeks later? They said, you're right, I wouldn't want a free lunch. Do not take away my Copilot. Now that I'm seeing the value of it, I never want to go back. So I'm going to just urge you and encourage you to recognize that as people adopt Copilot and they come to your company, it will be a negative if you're not ready. Great questions. We're coming up on the 11:30 hour. Happy to field any more questions, but I also want to be respectful of everyone's time. And as Shelby has put in there, be looking for a lunch gift from PCA. Again, thank you for taking the time to be with us. We have another question, same type of question, connecting marketing and prospecting CRM results, sales tunnel, I think it's sales funnel, with financial dollars spent is one challenge that most organizations struggle with. Again, is Copilot the base tool to use? It is a fantastic question. I'm almost going to say the answer is probably not that Copilot is the tool. And here's why. Marketing and sales are actually ahead of the game because salespeople have certainly strove for efficiency for quite some time. Salesforce, Survey Monkey, all of these tools in the marketing and sales world have leaned into AI for some time now. So I would look at a tool that actually fits what you're after. And a lot of times the automation is built right in. We have a tool that we use that is specific to our industry in the MSP space. And so much of what we did to put on this webinar, so many of these emails that you received were personalized at first, but used AI to hit your inboxes. And so it is a great way to begin to play. The reason why I would say Copilot is probably not the best solution for that is that you're not really, the CRM and marketing is a different bailiwick. It's outside of the Microsoft platform already. But I would urge you, and again, feel free to collaborate with us and ask us some of those questions. But it's such an easy way to start the AI and automation spaces in sales and marketing. Great question. Any others? Well, again, thank you. Be watching for an email. It's coming from GiftBit. And so we just want to give that as our gift to you for taking time to be with us here today. And we're honored to be the trusted IT coach for so many of you. And let me just add one last thing, because a friend of mine just commented in here and it reminded me, one of the biggest blessings that I've seen through this is that we have seen companies send multiple people through this at multiple times. That just warms my heart, because it means that the time was so valuable that they told somebody in the organization to come be a part of it. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your continued trust in us. And I hope you have an amazing weekend and afternoon. Thanks.